Hello everyone, and welcome to our review of the book Rome Sweet Home. So there's this very touching topic, right, that Corithains dealt with very early on in the book, and that's the topic on contraception. And quite frankly, even for we Catholics, it's quite delicate. And even though as Catholics we know the teachings of the church on contraception, and we know that is a very delicate topic, and that as far as the church is concerned, if you're using artificial means of contraception, you're committing a grievous sin. Even though we know all that, we also know that the compliance level is not as high as it's supposed to be. Now, what I find very interesting and striking is that someone like Corithains, who was quite anti-Catholic, would, having read a Catholic book on the topic, come to conclusion, as Kimberly did, that contraception was not Christian. Now, when we look at the topic of contraception, and as Catholics, we know that we need to read Humanae Vitae. We know that there's so much material of the church on this topic, but I'd like to just break it down, maybe kind of a way that it may be easier for us to understand visually. And for us to do that, we need to go back to the Garden of Eden. Now, in the Garden of Eden, after man sinned, because remember, God says, do not eat the fruit of the garden. If you eat it, you will die. So, meaning that after eating the fruit of the garden, the man died, literally. And we're told that death is more like mortal sin. Man became spiritually dead. Now, God told the angels, block the garden so that they will not have access to the tree of life. Why? Because you cannot eat the tree of life, or the tree that had the capacity for life, in a dead vessel. Because at that point, Adam and Eve had sinned, right? And they were dead spiritually. And this is from Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine. The tree of life, as it was understood, is the tree that could give, you eat it for the continual renewal of your physical life. Now, you cannot you cannot continue to do that which has a capacity to renew and continue or perpetuate physical life in a vessel that was dead, because that would be disaster. Dead vessels meant that man had high capacity for sin. So if man had capacity for sin, and then you take life and put in that capacity for sin, then it means that you're perpetuating life in a state that will become a problem for the life itself. Imagine if someone like Hitler didn't die. It means that by now none of us will be alive, because that tendency for perpetuating for evil plus life is a disaster. In the same way, if we now come to the new and everlasting covenant in the Eucharist, we're told that you cannot receive the Eucharist in a state of mortal sin. Why? Because the Eucharist is the life-giving bread. It's life. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is life. This is the bread of life. You cannot receive the bread of life. You cannot receive life in a dead vessel. So, in the same vein, if you cannot, the tree of life could not be received in man that was in a state of the state that was caused by the fall in the Garden of Eden. In the same way, we're told you cannot receive the bread of life in a state of mortal sin, which is what happens when you're not in a state of grace. Because when you're in a state of grace, it means that you don't have a mortal sin. You have not committed a mortal sin. Mortal, kill, dead. So when you commit a mortal sin, that is a sin that is capable of killing your spirit, then you're not in a state of grace. Now, fast track to marriage. Marriage, we know, is a sacrament. And sacrament, again, outward sign of inward grace. Marriage is also a covenant. In this covenant of marriage, there's an exchange of person. The man says, I give myself to you. The woman says, I give myself to you. And that exchange of person brings about new life, right? So it's like an exchange that has a capacity for life in itself. 9 months after, you name the life. So if the actual marital act in itself is life-giving, you cannot take the life-giving capacity of marriage and put it in a dead vessel. What is a dead vessel? When you intentionally block the life-giving capacity of marriage. You have blocked the life-giving capacity of marriage and made the life-giving capacity of marriage to become dead, and you now want to plant the seed of life inside. It's not possible. We know that the way the new and everlasting covenant is renewed is by frequent receiving of the sacrament of the Eucharist, right? And that has to be done in a state of grace. That has to be done in a state of being alive. In the same way, the marital act is the way through which the marriage covenant is renewed. And that has to be done in a state of aliveness, That has to be done in a state of, you don't take away the life-giving capacity. The life-giving capacity or the life-making capacity of the marital act. Once you take it away, then it's tantamount to receiving the Eucharist, when you're not in a state of grace, right? And I liked all the expressions and all the explanations that were contained in the book Rome Sweet Home. It says, it's like, when we see the Eucharist as, the new and everlasting covenant, and we know that we renew that new and everlasting covenant through the reception of the Eucharist, you don't receive communion and spit it out. Do you understand? It's a sacrilege. It's an insult. Do you understand? In the same vein, you don't take the life-giving capacity of the marital covenant and then, block it or spill it out or spit it out, because it's like you're taking the the pleasure, but you don't want the life-giving capacity of that marital act. It's not right. Some people will say, but the Catholic Church also supports the natural method. Yeah, the natural method works with nature. It does not kill the vessel, right? It does not take away the life-giving capacity of the marital act in itself. And that's the difference, because remember that what you do by artificial contraception is you stop the life-giving capacity of the marital act, and that is where there's a problem. But if you work with the natural capacity of marriage, then therein lies the difference. You're not killing the vessel. Do you understand? You're working with the vessel as it is. But the point is that the vessel needs to be in certain conditions in order to produce life. There are times when that vessel is in that condition. There are times when the vessel is not in that condition. If you put life into the vessel when it's in the condition for producing life, life will come out. If you put life into the vessel when it's not in the condition of producing life, life will not come out. You work with the vessel as it is. Where there's a problem is when you now they burn the vessel, destroy it, then you're now pouring life into something that is dead. You're pouring life into something that is destroyed. There's a difference between both of them, and even at that, we are also still encouraged to trust and believe God. So the natural method is not supposed to be used as a method in perpetuity when you're not discussing or having conversations with God. You're supposed to have conversations with God and then trust God and then believe God. Do you understand? And and it's interesting what Kimberly said. She said, I trusted God for everything, but all of a sudden I just realized that I kind of excluded my trust in Him in terms of my family, my capacity to raise my family and all the rest, And she thought about it and said, no, if my trust in God is 100%, then it has to be 100%, including my belief that He's able to do. Do you understand? Whatever it is that my limitation or my economics or my circumstance and everything may be telling me, do you understand? It's not working. So, like I said, this is a very, very touching topic for us, even as Catholics. But let's trust God. Let's know that He says, on this rock I build my church, and the gate of hell shall not prevail. Let us know that whatever the church is asking of us is actually God asking it of us. And let's trust and believe that God, who has not disappointed us, God who has been faithful, God who knows us and asked us to do this, will be faithful, do you understand, to us. Let's not be scared. Let's not allow the devil to do what he did to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, to say, to deceive them into, causing their vessel to be broken. Let's not do that. Let's trust and believe God. And may the good Lord help us so that we'll continue to trust and believe in Him. And may our Mother Mary help us so that we'll trust and believe in God. Amen.